Server. We get some progress. Lads, good evening to you. I'm delighted to have Meg Sabowick on the call with us. I am just going to read out something and then I'm just going to let Meg get on with it. And so the preamble was that when I asked Meg to jump on I know Meg's history and her heart for kids and children and fitness and all those things. And that's a physical fitness, that's a mental fitness, all those sort of things. So tonight we're going to be talking about devices and gaming, how they affect our nervous system and physical health. And I know this is a really important topic, and Meg is all over this. This is presented all around the place, and I'll let Meg do some introduce herself in a minute. This is now taken on a different spec, and so far as young people, gaming, devices, bullying, all those sort of things is an issue for everybody concerned. And it has been some horrific stories around the planet, not least my own country, Ireland, where there's been some desperate tales of people falling into serious trouble with bullying and the effects it has on their mental and physical health, and worse. And you can imagine where that would go to. So I'm delighted. The timing is magnificent. So I'm delighted to have Meg with us tonight. Meg, thank you for jumping on this. I know you're hard for the kids and the fitness and all you do, because we were at the same gym for a while, and I got to my sessions early every now and again. I could see you with kids going through their process and how you interacted with them. Tell me about yourself, and then I'll let you get on with what you do and why you do it and what you see value in doing it.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you, Mick, for having me here, and thanks, guys, for jumping on board. Whether you're watching this now or coming back to it and watching it a bit later, I appreciate your time. I guess I'll start with what I'm doing presently. At the moment, I work with people's nervous systems to help maintain a stable balance, so that we can recognize in our bodies when we tip into a stress state or into overwhelm. And that then transcends into movement. So I sort of work with kids, teens, adults, and also online with helping people move better from the inside out. What's happening in the world today is we have so much going on in our world. I think, Andrew, you were just doing timesheets before this, right? Yeah, we're time poor, right? But what's actually happening is we're just trying to cram too much in, and our bodies, our physical vehicle, I call this a vehicle, it just can't handle it. And what's tending to happen is we're becoming a very tense, rigid, and stuck vehicle. And that's then playing a role, right, in, of course, our behaviors and actions moving forward, right? All of us here, of course, that are on this call and watching it later, we're all very familiar with how we use devices in the world we're in, as to they play a huge role in our life. And I guess my passion lies within just bringing a certain sense of awareness to individuals, humans, parents, dads, mums, as to how we can instill better quality behaviors in our kids. And if we want to see change in our kids, guess where it starts? It starts with us. So that's what I do. I work sort of one-on-one at Adamstown in Newcastle, but also do online work moving forward in schools and that in across New Zealand and Australia.
Very good. Can I ask, when did this interest come about? How did it come about? What led you down this path?
Yeah, so I wrote my first book in goodness, it's 2025 now, isn't it? It was 2022. It was released, called Watch Your Language, and it was a book sort of on paying attention to our self-talk and the words we speak to ourselves, and of course how to change that. And in the studying of that book, I stumbled across the quite damaging world of our social media apps. And of course, gaming, and how much time we started to spend on social media. And it was in the research for that book that I became really highly interested in how social media, gaming, and big tech is changing our world as humans. And that's kind of what started this journey moving forward, as to how we can bring awareness to, you know, how these things are changing our bodies and affecting our nervous system and ultimately affecting our confidence and our self-talk.
Yeah, yeah, and one of the things I did early on in the piece in this lads talk was I put out a questionnaire to say, if you had a choice of topics, what would you like to see being discussed? And I'd say if I had 12 responses, I'd say 9 of them was something around this exact topic, and that's probably gone by 12 months ago, I guess, Greg, because then I want to put that quick questionnaire out. So I reckon it was around that. What I'm going to do now, Meg, is I'm going to leave you alone. I'm going to let you do your thing. Roll out some of those stats. As you know, men are simple creatures. We like numbers. We like to see what's going on. So you do your thing and punch through it. And as we get through, and if I stop you every now and again, it's because something triggered me there and then. And then
Yeah,
at the
please
end,
jump in and ask. I'm so big on that because otherwise we lose it.
yeah.
So
And if
yeah,
we're all
really.
good, we can wait till the end and shoot a question or 2 or 3 at you.
All
Okay.
right, awesome. And I just wanted to shout out firstly to you guys that are on here right now. Do you guys both have kids that are watching this at the moment? Yep. Girls, boys, or both?
Both.
Boys.
Boys? Yep.
Three girls.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I want to talk broadly.
Three boys.
Yeah. That's awesome.
I'll
Thank you.
swap you one at least. You can have my 15-year-old.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, guys. Because look, again, all of this about what I'm about to discuss is actually pretty across the board now for boys and girls. So hopefully all this information lands. And as I said, I'll send you through these information so you can look further into it if you wish. But what I wanted to sort of touch on, and I, being a movement teacher and a yoga teacher, I'm very passionate about learning about the body. I feel that sort of when we were in school, you know, we kind of messed it up a fair bit, like what we're doing now. We tend to sit in chairs and we become quite sort of stagnant from a really, really young age. And this vehicle of ours is what we have to get around in for the rest of our life. So what we do with it day in and day out plays a huge role in how we feel. Do you guys agree?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
With our kids, again, I'm going to be sharing some research from the book, The Anxious Generation. I don't know if any of you have heard of that book, but it's an amazing book that came out quite recently, post-COVID, very much directive on how devices, social media and gaming is effective of our behaviours in our kids. So again, I'll reference that into the notes. But quite simply, I always start with the body first because I think it's something we all have and it's something we understand. But if we sort of, I guess, can you guys see me here?
Yeah.
If our bodies are in a space where they're open, they're relaxed, we actually present in a calm and confident manner to another human when we're facing them, right? It's pretty easy to see here. My shoulders are back, my head's up, the body's open, and that is approachable to another human being. If we look in a local shopping centre, for example, it's a really good idea for this, or kids at a bus stop, what you might see is their bodies are kind of closed off like this, their shoulders are rolled in, and they might be on their device. Now, if you have somebody like this approaching you with their phone in their hand, flicking through here, is that someone you're about to say hello to, right? Is that someone that looks approachable or friendly? Probably not. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of everything I'm going to speak on today because I believe our bodies come first. This vehicle here is just listening to our cues, right? This vehicle is designed to protect us. That's what the autonomic nervous system is designed to do, to protect us when it believes there's a threat. If our shoulders come up, right, we're putting on our armor and we've immediately gone into protection mode, right? What's happening is our breath goes up in and around our chest and the body thinks there is a threat. When in reality, we might be just holding our phone, right? We might be just tired or stressed or overwhelmed. And that then sends a message to our nervous system that we are under tension, right? That's going to play a massive knock-on effect onto how we think about ourselves, our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors. So this is everything about tonight. about how just even holding these devices, the information we receive on these, right? And of course, how much time we spend on this plays a huge role in how we feel from the inside out. So I just want to throw out the question to you guys, and also Mick as well. In our own world, you know, with our own devices and phones and things like that, do we notice ourselves caving in when we hold a device?
You mean from a rounded shoulder perspective?
Correct. Yeah. Like, do you actually notice the position we actually hold a device in?
For me, it's more if I'm sitting back of the ever kneeling, and but I am slouching back. My spine is not straight; it's definitely curved at the bottom end for sure.
Yeah.
So it's not a position I would ordinarily sit in, except when I'm on the phone thing. I'll just spend 10 minutes scrolling or whatever.
That's a good number. 10 minutes is much better than quite a few hours. So
Well, it might be 10, it might be 20. So I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Any of the other blokes as well at all, or sort of notice what it feels like when we're holding a device, or in the shoulders, in the head, in the neck? Any of that sort of somatic response?
Yeah, I think particularly when you're sitting, let's say, on a couch and you're leaning forward and you're leaning down, like it obviously then pronounces it a little bit more. But yeah, that's probably when I would notice it, when I'm not sitting properly. If I'm at work or if I'm sitting at the table, yeah, it's more back up and I'm looking at it like I would a book.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. I want to bring that just to attention first, because it's something that we, probably all of us on this call, we've all grown up in what's called like a play-based environment, right? We probably grew up going outside, probably grew up having to take risks, falling off things, climbing up trees, all that kind of stuff. Whereas opposed these days, most of our kids, of course, not all, from sort of that 2010 era, have grown up with smartphones. And it's a very, very different environment that our kids are facing now, because their bodies only know to have the device as they're growing up, as opposed to what we might have grown up to in a play-based environment, right? So and I'm just going to share some little stats here, because I think it's really important to understand this. But in the book, The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt, he did a lot of research in between when smartphones came out. So if we're looking at the smartphone coming out, 2010, in and around that era, and it was all exciting and everyone was quite, intrigued by, I think, the Apple phone. And it was sort of since that era, over that next 5 years, where a lot started to change in our kids. And he's actually shared a lot of stats and graphs that I won't go into here on this call, but I will share in the notes about what really changed in 2012 for a lot of our kids. And he goes into sort of behavioral rates, so such as anxieties, depressions, and things like that, and how much they increased over that 2012 to 2013 period. And that actually came with the intervention of the front-facing camera. So you guys have got kids, yeah?
Yeah.
Yep. Who's taken a selfie before?
Yeah.
Yep. So our kids, of course, if we're in that, era of, growing up in that 2010 phase where the kids might be 12, 13, 14, things like that, selfies were everything. And in 2010, the very first filter that came out was those bunny ears, and, it was all cute and fun and games. And unfortunately, with that addiction to the front-facing camera in 2012, basically a lot of the stats for our mental health rates have changed significantly between 2012 and 2013. They're saying here that the first one here, this is in the US. So the rates in our mental health in boys have gone up 109% in that space, and in girls is 134%. And again, that's where our time started to get spent on social media, taking photos, sending them off, whether it be TikTok, Instagram, I think Snapchat, it was back in the day. And we started to get this addiction to our phones and how they made us feel. Yeah. Does that resonate with you guys?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I wanted to share those stats out because it did start a long time ago, where we're kind of experiencing the knock-on effect from it now. So it's not a new thing that started Again, everything kind of takes time to escalate. But I feel what we're seeing now is behaviours in our children and our kids. Between Ben and I, we've got a 5 and an 8-year-old, and they're behaviours that don't seem like our kids, right? Our kids are becoming overwhelmed with so much information coming in. It's too much for our brains to handle, right? Remember, our brains have not changed, but big tech has. The amount of information and videos and pictures and content that our kids are watching is too much for the brain to handle. So therefore, our autonomic nervous system is unable to sit in a relaxed and at ease space, which we'll go into in a moment. And our kids are feeling like stress, moving into that fight flight state, or of course they're burning out and they're dropping down into dissociated states and feeling numb. And that's where the behaviors stem from. Yeah. Am I making sense so far, guys?
Yeah.
Any questions so far, just on that? Okay. So I want to just share when we're in New Zealand, and I'm going to do my best to paint a picture in your heads about this. And some of you might already have, gone over this model before. We spoke to the kids about a model of health, right? So we kind of think of health as more fitness or doing things and things like this, but I kind of want to talk about it on an inside level, right? Think about a triangle. So 3 points of the triangle. At the top of the triangle, we have our thoughts. Yeah. So even if you want to draw this down, I don't know if you guys have a pen paper in front of you, but I'm a very, I need to write things down person. So depending on what works for you, so you can actually see what this actually looks like. But at the top of the triangle, we've got our thoughts. So it sits up the top here. At the second part of the triangle, right, we have what's called our emotions and our feelings. Right. And then, of course, at the third part of the triangle here, we have our behaviors. Okay. So you're going to have thoughts, feelings, and then behaviors. Now, I wanted to just share that model out because it's something that has been a huge, I guess, learning curve for myself. I don't know how much Mick has shared on my history, but I've spent over 20 years myself in disordered eating from a very, very young age, believing certain thoughts about myself, and then making that a very well practiced habit for the next 20 years or so. And I had to actually change, right, the energy behind my thoughts to create a different behavior. So I just want to quickly talk on this model because I feel it plays a massive role, again, in how our kids are responding and to gain an understanding of what world they might be seeing, right? So we have to understand that our thoughts are just thoughts. We have 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day, right? That's a lot in a day. I think we all understand that. But they come and they go. They're not backed with charge. They're not loaded with energy unless we give it energy, right? So think of them as like clouds in the sky. They come, they go. Sometimes there's more clouds in the sky and sometimes there's not as many. Yeah. The second part of the triangle is where we start to give those thoughts ammo, so to speak, or we give them energy. So if we're looking at the emotions and the feelings, right? If I give power to a thought, right? If I have a thought, I look in the mirror, for example, a young teenager, whether it be a boy or a girl, and I look in the mirror and think, oh, my skin's breaking out today, right? Or I feel a bit bloated, or why don't I have any abs, or why can't my biceps get bigger? Whatever it is, right? We then have chosen to give an emotion to the thought, right? I'm not enough as I am. Right? Or I wish I could be something different. And then we spend half our morning, right, with that same thought. Has anyone been there? Got stuck in thought and you've spent 30 minutes, you've spent a day, you've spent 2 days, right, over and over onto that thought. And we kind of miss out on it. That's when we kind of give a thought power. And that's then what creates our behaviors. Okay, so without going too far into it, each emotion carries a different charge. It's kind of like a radio station. Think of it that way, right? Some emotions are going to feel a bit better, like a higher vibration. It's going to feel like a really good radio station. You're going to want to listen to that. But some emotions are going to feel like one of those low, energy radio stations. You're going to be like, oh, this is crap. There's too many ads. I don't like it, but I can't change the channel. So it's really, really important to understand that the model of health can go one of two ways, right? When we have a thought, we can attach an emotion and a feeling to that, right? Where we can actually go, okay, I'm not content with this. I'm falling into judgment, right? I'm not enough as I am, or I wish my body looked different. And that then creates a certain behavior, okay, is what we're seeing in our kids. The other way that that model can go is we have a thought, right? And we can then land into a place of acceptance, right? Or we can land into a place of gratitude, or we can land into a thought of just saying, okay, I'm enough just as I am, and this is okay. And that then also creates a behavior, right? Both of those two models are going to have a different response in your nervous system. The first one's going to close your nervous system down. It's actually going to go into tension. So if we carry an emotion that's lined with judgment or resentment, or say jealousy, shame, or guilt, your autonomic nervous system and our kids' autonomic nervous system is going to contract. Does that make sense so far? The body becomes rigid, and just like what I demonstrated before, it becomes closed. We put on the armor, you can see straight away the shoulders are up around the ears, and I have just gone into protection mode from, say, a thought of shame or guilt, right? The opposite is also true. Okay, so if I look in the mirror and I see my skin breaking out and I'm like, it's okay, I'm a teenager, it's all right, I'm grateful I've got 2 feet and a heartbeat, or whatever it might be, I'm grateful I get to see my best mate today, the body stays open. Have a look at the difference. The shoulders are back, again, the head's up. There's an air of confidence about that that comes with the energy of the emotion. All right, any questions on that? Does it make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Absolutely.
It sort of comes back in and around to that. So I just wanted to sort of start with that. I'm going to share a little bit about kind of how much we're watching our screens, gaming, social media, things like that. I'll also just share a little bit onto filters and edits. Now, I know the guys that are on here, you've both got girls and boys. I'm going to share a little bit about the damaging effect of like body editing apps. And the reason I share that is because I work with a lot of kids that are struggling with mental health, or moving through whatever it might be, but their parents are unaware of things like editing apps and things like that that can make us feel a certain way. And also AI images that are now coming onto our screens. So I might actually start with that. I think all of us are quite aware that we're in 2025 now and AI is everywhere. Yep. So what our kids are seeing, whether it be on YouTube, and YouTube's a really big one for this, whether it be on YouTube, TikTok, Snapchat, whatever platform they're using, most of it shows the highlight reel. Do you guys agree? Yeah, even you blokes on here too. You might, have a look on my husband's phone, whatever. Sometimes, he shows me stuff on his Instagram, and same thing as the girls. It's all prettied up, and it's everyone's best self, but it's not real. I think we're all quite aware of that. But when we see something day in and day out, and our kids are on average on their phones about 5.5 hours a day, right? We're then practicing something, right? So our bodies and our brains get used to what we see, right? So if every single image out there and every single video is edited and filtered and also adapted to look the best version of themselves, then what do we believe as kids we need to be? Yeah, we then feel the need to modify our own photos through body editing apps. And there's quite a few out there that are very, very simple to use. Are you guys aware of the body editing apps that are on there? Mick,
Nope.
do you know much about it at all?
No idea, to be God's honest truth.
Yeah. And look, it's not important what they are. I'm not going to go into, what those apps actually are. Again, I'll leave that in your research.
Sorry.
Yep.
Quick question. Are those sort of things not regulated? I mean, because there's an awful lot of regulation in the social media world, and I'm no expert on this, but surely somebody would be on top of that for the protection of our own kids, like some government body or whatever.
So. Yeah. You'd
Yeah.
absolutely think so, but no. So far, as of today, they are still all allowed. So there's apps such as Perfect Me. I think it's called Man Up. That's a men's one. They're all in my book, What's Your Language? I did research into them in the book. I couldn't actually find a copy of the book to go in there. But there's quite a few. Facetune, of course, is quite a big one. And we have to understand that 90% of the images and things that people are seeing, our kids especially, on any of these platforms are filtered to take away any skin conditions, pimples, to modify their waist, to enlarge their biceps, to add abdominals. This is for guys as well. It's not just girls. But that then creates an image in our kids' head of who we think we should be.
Yeah.
And that's the danger. Okay, so like everything, what I mentioned before, we choose to pick up our device. It's a choice. We all have it, right? And with our kids, it's a practice. Again, they have grown up in a phone-based environment. I see kids in Qatar, babies in a pram on their phone. It's given to them so early. So none of this, once again, is our parents or our kids' fault. It's been conditioned into us, but we have to understand that so much of what we're seeing is not real. So unfortunately, what's happening and why our kids are doing things that don't seem like themselves is because we're developing an image that is not real and can never, ever be achieved. Yeah. So when we're looking at, again, gaming, whether it be YouTube or even chat rooms such as what's it called, Twitch, things like that, I think kids are on these days. So it's like a gaming platform. Again, I don't know a lot about gaming, guys, so I'm not going to step into a conversation that I don't know a lot about. But again, everything has these cute little filters and makes us look our best self. So when our kids get to the mirror, right, at the end of the day or when they're on the way to school, then the dialogue to themselves is, why aren't I enough as I am? And that's why we're seeing behaviours stem from that as well. Any questions on that one so far, guys?
Just very quickly, and there's probably no actual answer here, but is there such a thing as a good age to introduce kids to phones, tech, these sort of things? Things that families would have some control over, like a phone or an iPad or something like that? Because
I'd say 16.
Okay.
Especially the social media. Look, like anything, Nick, everything is fine until it is overdone.
Yeah,
It's like you overdo your meat. It's everything is not bad. It's how we use the platform, right?
Yes.
And that's what I think danger is. It's not my job to say that things are bad. They're not. It's just an app doing its thing.
Yes.
However, what has been created from the energy of how people feel is, I feel, what's made it what it is today.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think personally, I don't myself, and Ben, I actually don't have an iPhone myself. I swapped an iPhone for a Google Pixel phone, and I have no apps on that phone at all. I have my iPad, which has my social media on there and things like that, but I set time aside to do my work so that I'm actually not carrying my smartphone with me. And checking it all the time, because I myself was spending up to 5 hours a day on it. I'd stand in the coffee line and I'd pull it out and I'd check it rather than talk to another human. I'd actually be like, I'll just, put my head down and look at my social media. And I don't know about you guys, but scrolling on social media 99% of the time doesn't do anything for me. No. I don't really learn anything from it. I don't feel elevated and alive from it. And we've got to understand that that's kind of how it's making us feel day in and day out. So that's, I guess, my answer to that question, Mick. But I also understand that the world is what it is, and we are growing up in that environment. I think it's just setting time aside and being, mindful to have boundaries around it. I think that's potentially the answer.
Yeah, no, I do feel for parents of kids in that age group, that let's say 9 to 16, 9 to 17 or something, where they would be hammered at school, and the pressure, the peer pressure would be frightening.
Yeah, it absolutely
Around that
is.
sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, when I was in New Zealand recently, I think it was last year that we went, to be honest, and we spoke to primary kids, so age 5 and 6, and then we spoke to the high schools. And it's funny, the primary kids understood a little bit more about how it made them feel, which I'm about to go into, the body and the nervous system a bit. Whereas the teens were quite addicted to their phones and didn't want to let go of it. So they're already gone by teenagers' space, where it's the phone is more important than feeling good.
Yeah.
The younger kids haven't tipped that way yet, but what we found is that it's more in the teenagers where feeling good now is not a priority, but getting amount of likes and shares and comments on Instagram is.
Yeah.
And that's the danger, because it just takes away our creativity. It takes away who we are as a person. We don't know how to be authentic anymore. And again, as boys or as girls or whatever, it takes away our dreams and our goals, because we're looking at everybody else's all the time. And we start to think, oh, this is how I should be, but it's not real.
Just quickly, about 4 sentences ago, you said something like looking for shares and likes. Has there been a study done around that, insofar as that if they pick 100 kids and they send a post out or whatever they call it, is there an endorphin rush? Is there something to correlate the internal feeling with the external action of the shares, likes, and thumbs up and all that carry on?
Great point. I could actually talk on this for a long time, to be honest. I'll simplify this the best that I can. I'm writing my next book at the moment called The Perfection Pandemic, and it's very much on exactly that, social media and our nervous system, and why we feel the need to actually post. So it kind of, I feel, comes down to, there's a certain number, I think, in our teens' heads, how many likes we need to have. And every time they get a little buzz and a notification, whatever that is, they, of course, then get a rush of dopamine that then validates their potentially edited photo.
Yes.
Right? We've got to understand that it's really easy to use these editing apps, and most of our kids have them. I've been working in schools long enough. And asking kids, just do the littlest modification, or I put on a filter. Most kids will use a filter that is still editing your photo. So what's happening is they are getting a love heart, a tick, a whatever it might be, sizzling fire, all that kind of stuff, which then tells them that photo is now enough, right? That validation needs to come from ourselves.
Yeah.
So the more likes and comments we get on a photo that we've posted that has potentially been edited, we then believe we're not enough as we are.
Okay.
So this is where I work with a lot of girls, and of course things like I won't go too deep into it, but of course behaviours that stem from that, like what I went through, of course, stem from that feeling. Well, if I do this, if I look a certain way, then I'm going to be accepted.
Yeah.
So certain, and I'll just dive one more into this. I talk a bit on it in Watch Your Language, in a chapter called The Selfie Addiction. And I dive into TikTok a fair bit. So our kids are watching about 3,200 TikToks a day.
Whew. Well, what's a TikTok?
TikTok's just a short, it's a short little reel. You can also do it on YouTube now. So YouTube do shorts, and they're about, you've got kids with you, Andrew. How long are the YouTube shorts, kids? About 8 to 15 seconds. Yeah, about that. So they're really, really short little videos. They literally just go bang, 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 and the kids are like swipe, 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 swipe. And in that content, again, everyone is sharing something to do. So especially with our young girls, I think Greg, you mentioned you got 3 girls.
No, I've got the 3 boys.
You got 3 boys. Andrew, you got the girls,
Yeah, I've got the 3 girls. I was just arguing with 2 of them. Well, 2 of them were arguing, and it's like, get out.
So for the girls especially, I'm just going to sort of talk on this a little bit. What you'll find on TikTok is there's so much about the body, right? when you're a teenager, you're still figuring out what your body is. And same with the boys as well, Greg. Like, we're developing, we're growing, things are changing, puberty, all this kind of stuff. And then there's stuff on there telling you to eat this, don't eat that, weigh under a certain weight, right? Everything's telling the girls, you know, oh, be skinny and make sure you fit into this by a certain age. And it's really damaging content that's on there, and it's so easy to find. And it's just, as a parent, just to be aware that, again, there's so many videos out there where it can be quite damaging to their health, so to speak. Again, just by watching this particular content, and then the algorithm, because they like that content, sends them more of the same day in and day out. They all receive the similar content. It can be quite damaging to their health. Yeah,
and that's just in their face every time they look at it.
Absolutely. And that's exactly, unfortunately, what big tech designed to do. They designed to steal our attention from our intention. Yeah. So our kids, unfortunately, because social media prize on our negative bias and our emotional reactions, it will continue to send you the content that triggers you and makes you sick, unwell, and unmotivated. And that's for us adults as well. So you'll know that if you've you've gone on Facebook or something and you've had emotional reactions, and it'll send you stuff. That's all of this meta listening into what we do. But that's exactly it. We are wired as humans for connection. So again, big tech are super smart by doing things like the like button and the fire emoji and the love hearts and all of the things. They tap into that emotional part of our brain that sparks dopamine. And of course, we jump on our phones for more the first thing in the morning when we woke up. Yeah. So I think I'll quickly just share a little bit here, because I think from my experience, and again, I don't know your kids, but I have worked a lot with kids, and the first thing they do when they wake up in the morning is generally reach for a phone or a device. And that's kind of something that I want to just touch on a little bit of what that does to our nervous system. So I won't be too much longer on this call, guys. I don't like to overload with information. It's just kind of like just have a chat about it and keep it as simple as possible. But again, if we think about when we wake up in the morning and, we've had a bit of a rest, our nervous system has had an opportunity to relax, and I'll talk about the layers of the nervous system in a moment. If we, wake up in the morning and we roll over and we get up and we pick it up, and of course the first thing, again, that our kids usually do is go on some sort of social media or gaming, again, into that space, we straight away put ourselves in another world, right? Which means we're actually not present with what's here. We haven't tuned into how we feel. We haven't checked into our body kind of thing. We haven't checked into our mental or emotional state. And we potentially have seen something. Sorry, I'm using a book for a phone because I don't have my phone here. This is a phone, but I'm potentially seeing something that triggers me, right? Again, I might see something or someone that's been edited, and I might then compare that with my body, whether it be a boy or a girl. Yeah. That is then going to run the course of my day. So who of you guys here that's had a day like that, right? So say you haven't slept very well, you pick up your phone and you're on that for 10 minutes or something like that, and you're like, oh, this is great. Then you see your emails. Who's checked their emails in bed? Yeah. And again, you're still in bed at that point, right? Haven't done any movement, haven't done anything. It's no wonder we start to feel like shit, because we then are like, oh, look at the day I'm about to have. And guess what? You get up and you spill your coffee, right? You get stuck in traffic and someone cuts you off. You have a bit of road rage, or that person has road rage. You get a meeting with your boss, right? You're late for work, right? You forget to pick up the groceries for your wife, and your whole day is a knock-on effect. Who's had one of those? Or a few? Okay, so it's so important what we do in the morning first up, because the moment you pick up a device, you give your power away. You are giving your energy and your time and attention to something that is going to drain your energy, right? We all know that when we're talking to someone, right, and they have their phone in their hand, right, we immediately feel second off. Who's experienced that before? And they might just be holding their phone in their hand or have it on the table. My mum has it on the table. My mum's 83. She has her phone open on Facebook on the table when we're talking. It blows my mind, right? But it makes me feel insignificant because she's saying the phone is more important than me, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit on what happens with the body and the nervous system based on kind of what I just said just then. If we wake up and we feel anxious or sad or unmotivated or judgmental or critical, right? Before we even start our day, those feelings send our nervous system into a state of protection, okay? Right? Immediately, the body has got the cues that the world around us is unsafe. Yep. So this vehicle here is going to have a somatic, and somatic being in the body, right? The body is going to do something based on that emotional reaction, right? Remember, the body is always listening to us and the body comes first. So if we've looked into our phone and we are now comparing ourselves with an image that we have seen on YouTube, or, you know, we might be into, as I said, it might be even into gaming with that as well. And even the images we see onto there or whatever, and it just dulls us down. We feel flat and unmotivated and don't want to get up into our day. That emotional response is going to have a physical reaction into the body, okay? Judgment, comparison, as I said before, anger, frustration, resentment, jealousy, righteousness is all going to close the body, and it's going to go into a protection mode. So our kids, because that's who we're talking about here, are going to start their day and already their back might be up a little bit. They might feel stressed, they might feel anxious, and they might be struggling with their thoughts. Yeah. We want to start to recognize what that looks like into the body, because if that's a pattern that continues to happen, right, the kids then get used to it, their body then gets used to it, and their nervous system, of course, gets used to being in a bit of a rigid and hypervigilant state. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah.
And of course, over time, what's going to happen is the body then will burn out, and that's when we move a little bit further down the ladder and our kids become dissociated, they become numb, they don't want to go outside, and the thoughts become a bit darker. Yeah. So does that make sense so far, guys? Cool. So I just want to briefly, and again, I'll do this the best I can without a diagram. Has anyone heard of the polyvagal theory at all?
Not me.
No. Cool. So again, keeping it really basic, the polyvagal theory was introduced by a gentleman called Dr. Stephen Porges, and that was in the late 1990s. He did a lot of research into the nervous system to dive a little bit deeper into the states of the autonomic nervous system. Right? Our autonomic nervous system is, again, designed to protect us, looks after our basic needs, our organs, our breath, our safety and our survival, right? And he looked into it to kind of explore where our body goes when we shift in between the states, right? So I'm just going to describe the model of the polyvagal theory and what it looks like. And I'd usually draw a ladder, and I can't actually sort of bring that up. So what I'm going to get you guys to visualize, or even draw onto your piece of paper, if you just draw a ladder like down the page and just, you know, have probably about 10 rungs of the ladder. It'll give you a nice visual into this. And again, you'll see it when you come into the notes, but it's an easy way to understand the functioning of the autonomic nervous system. Okay. At the very top of the ladder, right, I want you to just write the word safe or ventral.
Ventral, you said.
Ventral, V-E-N-T-R-A-L.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. In the middle of the ladder, okay, I want you to write the words fight, flight. And that simply means mobilized.
Is that on the next run down?
Go about the middle of the ladder, Andrew.
Yep.
Yep. So go about the middle of the ladder. Yeah.
Yep. And go fight or flight.
Fight, flight. Yep. And it's also known as mobilized.
Yep.
Yep. And at the bottom of the ladder, right, I want you guys to write the words freeze. And that's shut down or dissociation.
Yep.
Cool. And that's the bottom of the ladder. Our freeze state is also known as dorsal. So you can write that word down too. So DORSAL. Cool. Now with that in front of you, again, it's a really simple description. So look at that ladder as your nervous system, right? When Dr. Paul just spoke about the autonomic nervous system, in school, we learned that we have our sympathetic branch and our parasympathetic branch. Does that make sense? You guys remember that? So we have our rest and digest state, and we have also our, prep and run and fight and flee state. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the two very different states of the autonomic nervous system. What Dr. Paul just discovered is that our parasympathetic branch has two states, and that's at the top of the ladder and the bottom of the ladder. We have our ventral state and we have our dorsal state. Now, both of those parasympathetic states are very different. Our dorsal state, right, is immobilized. So my body is immobile, right? But it's immobile with fear. Okay, it's basically moved into a state of shutdown, right? I can't really move. I've gone into fear and my body is immobilized. At the top of the ladder, our ventral state is immobilized with safety. So I'm relaxed, I'm open, right? I can be present, but I feel safe. You feel safe with me, I feel safe with you. Now, at the middle of the ladder, you'll notice that it says fight, flight. And that's our mobilized state. So in fight, flight, our body goes into mobilization. The shoulders come up, right? The breath goes to the chest, and you might feel sick in the belly, and you go into tension like this. The armor comes on. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So can you guys see that the top and the bottom state are very different?
Yep.
Okay, great. So I like to call this the green zone, orange zone, and red zone. So traffic light system, basically. Yeah. So to share this simply without a diagram, let's have a think about just our normal work day. I'm just going to talk as adults for a moment here, right? The things that keep us balanced are linked into our primal or our reptilian brain, okay? That's sleep, sex, digestion, food, movement, and breath, right? And shelter. If we lose any of those things or they're not being looked after, how do we feel?
Not great.
Disconnected.
Yep, totally.
Yep.
If we're not moving well, if we're not eating well, right? If we're not getting enough sleep, too much screen time, all of that thing, if we're not connecting with other humans, if our shelter is taken away from us, we start to feel what? Stressed, yeah?
Yeah.
A little bit ungrounded, unsettled, anxious, yeah? We start to feel a bit fearful, yeah? So if we think about it, again, I'm just talking about a average human here who gets up, wakes up, goes to work, deals with traffic, etc., right? If we don't get enough sleep and we wake up and we jump on our phone first thing in the morning, we don't do any movement, we go to Macca's for breakfast, we get in the car and we go and do our 9 to 5 workday, so to speak, our basic needs are not being met. What happens over time is that we move from the top of the ladder that you can see there in front of you, down a few rungs into what's called our mobilized state. We know this is chronic stress. Yeah, you guys aware of that?
Yep.
Yep. So in our bodies, what we feel is tension. We have struggle with our digestive organs. We can feel tight and rigid. The hips become really sore. The lower back becomes really sore. We become reactive with ourselves and our partners. We can become judgmental. We can become more angry and frustrated and reactive, not responsive. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yep. So the same goes in our kids. It's exactly the same nervous system, right? So once again, if our kids are spending over 5 hours a day on their phones, guess what? They are going to move down into a mobilized state. and you can see it in them. You can really see it in the kids. They're holding it in their shoulders. They might have spurts of anger or say things, and you're like, wow, where'd that come from? Right? Bless you if that was a sneeze. And you can see the tension in the kids. Does that make sense? Have you guys experienced that?
Yeah.
They might be fighting with their siblings or yelling at one another or yelling at you, and it's a reactive state. Yeah. So we all know this mobilized state very, very well, right? In the Western world, we tend to live there. We tend to be on the go all the time. We don't stop. So our bodies are getting used to living in this state. Does that resonate?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, like anything, we are nature. Nature is us. If we continue to live in this state, and also our kids, guess what happens?
Everyone ends up there.
Yeah, totally. But there's another state. Our bodies burn out. So if you go down the ladder further, right, and what you've written at the bottom of the ladder there says freeze.
Yep.
Okay, I've said that's an immobilized state, right, where our bodies now are numb. It looks very different. It looks like this. Can you see? That is very different to someone who is angry, like that. Very, very different. You guys have teenagers, right? You know when your teenager is pissed off, okay? And they're judging or whatever it might be. But if your teenager is dissociated, they are going to go inwards, right? They're going to move into a dissociated state. They might feel like they don't want to talk, and they might jump on their phones and be like this.
Yeah.
Or the gaming, a big one for that too. Again, that can become a distraction for how we feel. Make sense?
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'll just quickly demonstrate, just briefly, just those three states and what they look like again. And I'm going to start from the bottom because it's always nicer to go from the bottom to the top with this stuff. It's not nice to end in a dissociated state.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start there. Again, it's going to look like this in the body. Somatically, again, in the body, so you can recognize it in your kids, is like this. Shoulders in, closed, maybe curled in the couch or their bed, right? They're kind of not going to want to look up at you, and their device is probably going to be in their hands. It's going to be hunched over like this. They're not going to want to go outside. The body will be closed. The chin will be in. You'll notice that it's like a turtle coming into its shell. If you think of an animal, yeah?
Yeah.
So that's what freeze state looks like in our kids, okay? If you move up the ladder a little bit, we move into now mobilized, and what you'll find is the kids will be tense. This part here will be elevated. This is our protection, this is our armor. So what happens is it protects the heart, the shoulders come up, and your teenager might become reactive, right? And they might say things that can be a bit hurtful or unkind to themselves and others. Yeah?
Yep.
Last state, our ventral state, it'll look something like this. So the shoulders are back, they're a bit slower, a bit more relaxed, their head is up, they look confident, right? And they have a good gap between their shoulder and their ear. That's a really nice thing to note when you're talking to somebody about that big gap here. If this is closed, you'll find that you won't really want to talk to them because it's not as friendly. So really notice that in your kids as to where that is, and it'll actually show you what state they're in their nervous system. Yeah.
So now is that shoulder position relative to your ear an indicator how relaxed and open, even in adults?
Absolutely, it is, Mick.
Okay.
It's a really big. So we very visual people.
Yes.
Our just to go a little bit off topic here, we have cranial nerves that are all in this area, and there's 5 in particular that link into our nervous system, and that's our eyes, our nose, our mouth, into our ears, our hearing, and of course our vagus nerve connecting our gut and our brain. The very first thing I notice in you is your face, and that's the first thing you notice in me. When we're looking at other humans for a threat, that's the first thing we notice is that person safe or unsafe, and you'll notice what their body is doing. Yeah, and that in particular is something that is really, really good to know as ourselves, modeling it for our kids, But also, if we're not feeling so great, just have a think about how you're holding your body and how you can cue your body to kind of relax into the moment if it's not life-threatening. If it's life-threatening and you're being chased by a tiger, you are going to need to do what you need to do, okay? But most of the time, there's no tiger chasing after you. It's just work or emails or traffic or your wife or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And the body does not need to go into tension. So that's what we need to train our kids to do, right?
Yes.
And again, the best way to train our kids is to be the model ourselves.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
You can only lead a horse to water, and we cannot tell another person what to do, right? So if we want to see change in another person, then we've got to be that ourselves. And at the end of the day, the cool thing is that every single one of you on this call or watching it back has a body.
Yeah.
And kids will notice the state of your body, right? So if we choose not to pick up our phone as much or get outside more, or whatever it is, or to be a little bit more relaxed, they'll actually feel that from you. So it's a really cool thing that human to human has always had and will always have between each other, is the ability to co-regulate.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's it in a nutshell, because our nervous system, I believe our nervous system is everything. The body is fascinating. It is just so, so fascinating. And if we can re-cue this to feel safe, then it has a knock-on effect on our thoughts. If your body is open, you cannot have thoughts here that are linked with fear. You just cannot.
Yeah.
It is impossible, because your body is open, you're cueing your body that it's safe, and you might not like what's going on, but you're okay with it.
Yeah.
You land into a place of acceptance. You're like, yeah, okay, I'm struggling with this, but it's okay, right? But if your body is closed and it has gone into that spinal sympathetic state, into that space of reactivity, then that's when the fear is going to creep in. That's when the doubt, that's when the worry, that's when the thinking goes forward, and that's when the thinking goes backward. We go into thoughts of the future and we go into thoughts of the past. We don't do that when we land back into a regulated state. We just do not. That's what's so important. So for many of our kids, and again with my research, they're dropping into a dissociated state because they are overwhelmed with too much gaming or social media coming into their system. So sorry, Mick, go.
Well, I was going to say, you mentioned gaming a couple of times. What does gaming mean? I don't know what it means. What is it?
Just jumping onto like the what do they call this?
Online computer games or
online gaming, Minecraft, stuff
people.
like that.
Sorry, radio. Okay, so we're not talking about gambling, it's just gaming.
Look, it could lead into that pretty, but that's
okay.
gaming, where they're just battling others across the world or whatever it might be. But again, taking up 5, 6, 8 hours of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those people, like, there's certain people, as you explain, like they're sort of hunched over, like they don't want to give you eye contact and that sort of thing. And at work, I've noticed some people like that. How do you get an adult to change how they, like, they look at you, like you can see they look at you and they go, don't talk to me. That means you're going to give me work to do or something to do. And that sort of thing. How do you change an adult? I know a kid's a little bit easier than an adult. That sort of thing. Like,
great question. We can't change another person. I don't believe that, but we can be what we want to see in another person. And I think by people are ready when they're ready, so to speak. And if you, again, sort of demonstrate how you are kind of thing, people pick up on that, right? So again, if you're off your phone or say at work, for example, and I don't know, you choose to do something that's, I'm really big on moving, right? So people sit in chairs. I'm like, for every hour that you sit, get up and do something for 1 to 2 minutes, right? And if you say something like that, you start doing that, they start to notice that, and you become a better person, and people then pick up on that with you, right? You can always suggest things to them and stuff like that. But again, if people don't want to hear it, they're not ready, there's not much you can do. I do believe that change starts within ourselves. And as I said, adults, as you're right, we're very wired, we're very conditioned to be a certain way due to our environment. And the best thing I think that we can do is be what we see in another person, whether it be kids or adults. And you just worry about you, and that's all you need to do. You just put your attention into yourself, because we don't know if we can change another person, but what you can do is yourself. And that's it in a nutshell. You put your energy back into yourself, and when they're ready, they'll notice that and be like, well, what are you doing? Why do you feel so good every day? Like, you know, and then they ask the question and then go for it.
Yeah.
And there's your key into like, oh, well, you know, just be mindful and then that starts a conversation.
Andrew, one of the things we do at the warehouse in Newcastle with Juice Plus is that, and this might be something that could be worked into with your team. They're asked to be responsible, and because they're on their feet all day in the warehouse, they're asked to, when they need a spell, rather than going and sit in the loo, or rather than sit in the loo with the phone, go for a walk. There's a loop from our warehouse door. It's about a 5-minute walk.
Yeah, and you're at Merriweather, aren't you? So
yeah, no, well, we're at Steel River actually.
Yeah.
So they're asked to take responsibility, leave the phone there, of course, and just go for a walk, get out in the fresh air. Unless it's lashing rain, we can do a quick loop around the building a few times, which is sheltered.
Yeah.
But it gives them the power within themselves to they're not looking for permission. They're actually told to go and do it when they feel it's appropriate. Go for a walk, get some fresh air, and just to clear their head, rather than going to the loo and spend the 5 minutes sitting in there scrolling.
I love that. I think that's really, really helpful. And I think wherever you are, I don't know sort of what you guys do. And again, those you watching back, whether it's your workplace or whatever, but put and implement plans in place in your home environment and in your work environment that make you feel good. Phones don't make us feel good. We know that. And again, when I've asked my year 5s and 6s, how do your phones make you feel? They're like, oh, sad and tired and just anxious. They're usually the responses from the kids. They know they don't make them feel good. And we know that as adults. They're a tool and they're a good tool to use, but we need to use it well. So move towards the things that make you feel good. So like you said there as well, chase the things that elevate you. And the more you do it, what we practice is what will grow. That's always the case. If we're again practicing 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 hours on this, then that's what grows. And we end up with teenagers and kids who, again, struggle with anxiety or depressive thoughts or behaviors that aren't themselves, is because of Meta, big tech, conditioning this into us for the last 20 years. It's no one's fault but big tech. So again, in our environment with our kids and our teens, the home environment, chase the things that feel good, get outside, eat good quality food, get outside and move, play, come back to a play-based environment, and set boundaries around screen time. They might not like it. They absolutely will not like it. But like anything, with persistence and resilience, things start to change. And I'm pretty passionate about this stuff, and we have to do something now. Especially with the introduction of AI, absolutely streaming. Once again, it's a good tool to use, but unfortunately, when all the images of advertising and everything is AI generated, we are now looking on our screens into a world that's not real, and our kids are believing they're not enough as they are.
Meg, thank you very much. I've highlighted 2 lines which were at the end of the talk. I mean, the whole talk was great, but the last 2 were, and I have used my own wording here, is like cue your body into a relaxed state, like be aware of when you're not. And be the model ourselves, which is an incredibly strong and powerful. It's only 4 words, of course, but very powerful and strong. So particularly with, Andrew, my kids are all gone. They're doing their own thing. They got their own kids. With guys like young Andrew and Greg, kids are young, and the opportunity to be lost in phones and screens is big. But, the model, and dare I say it, the responsibility lies with the parents to be active and to be the model that they would like to see themselves. And kids pick up on that. I mean, all my kids are close to 30 now, so they've been around the block a few times, but you're young kids, you have time, and other people watching this have time to be the model I want to see. And I'm a big believer as well that if I get to my age, or people get to my age, which is early 60s now, and we have not been that light or beacon or whatever for our kids, but kids are younger generations, I think we've missed an enormous opportunity. And it could be the simplest of things. I mean, I'm very passionate about sports, so I'm involved with sports. But I think there's opportunities everywhere to be the model ourselves for a range of people, including our kids and young people in general, because if they don't see it, they're not going to do it. And so we're going to be in 2 generations' time, it's going to be horrific altogether.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is something I believe we can change, and I'll always maintain that belief, because I think anything is possible. If we believe we can do it, we can. And it's just so important, because we all have a gift to share. We've all, our kids, have got something to share to the world, but that gets taken away when we give our power to the devices.
Yeah.
And that's what's most important.
Yeah.
Meg, thank you so much. Thank you for jumping on. Thank you for the effort, and if you can please send me through that email, I can pass it on to the fellas. Lads, this of course will be recorded, and I'll pop it into the lads chat tomorrow, and I would encourage everybody to have a quick look and a refresher if you've been in it once. There's a lot of information there. It's something that cropped up in a few places for me, and I thought, well, we need to get somebody on who knew what they were talking about, and Meg, you're it. So thank you very, very much. Really appreciate your time tonight.
No worries at all, Mick, and thanks for jumping on, guys. I'll share the links to
thank you, Meg.
Details, and
Thank you,
if
Mick,
there's any questions, jump out.
No problem.
Thank you very much, Meg. Thanks, Meg.
No worries
Thanks,
at all, guys. Thank you for jumping on, and if there's any questions, just shout it out, and Mick will send them through to me, or just get in touch over on whatever it might be, Instagram or whatever, and I feel free to answer them or share any of the research equipment across, guys.
Thank you. Now I'm trying to find the stop recording button, but I don't know where it's gone. I got it. It was hiding. Okay, I'm going to stop recording now. So here we go.
All right. Thanks again.